Welcome to Roll, Ponder, and Play, a podcast dedicated to crafting stories through the application of role-playing game engines, combined with creative thinking and propelled into the ether by the barest of prompts. I'm Jarrett Hess, taking on all the roles of Game Master, Solo Player, Author, and Narrator. Come with me on a journey, and together let us explore realms of shadow, danger, and wonder. One role can decide the fate of many things. Welcome to episode 34 of the Queen of Shadows podcast on Roll, Ponder, and Play. I'm Jarrett Hess, Game Master, Solo Player, Author, and Narrator. In our previous episode, Eilwen and her companions finish their final leg of travel and arrive at the settlement of Longfalls. They witness a beautiful sunset backdropping twin waterfalls, the namesake of the settlement itself. The falls cascade off of a grassy plateau where, fed by cold mountain streams far to the north, they fall into the green valley that spreads out below them, wherein lies the settlement of Longfalls. Scratch and Aron nearly get into a fight as an unnatural and nameless something seems to put everyone on edge. As they enter Longfalls, the townsfolk are suspicious and even hostile towards the companions. The settlement is bursting at the seams with refugees from Highcrag, who have fled the settlement to the west. While Eilwen seeks lodging in a stable, they are attacked by the stableman, and in the ruckus that ensues, a pack of hungry children steal some of their supplies and then disappear down the side streets. Eilwen helps one refugee family and manages to get some information. An iron priest named Delos, the man claims, had visited an iron pillar near Highcrag, and he claims that it is the source of their ills and the fountain of the darkness at Highcrag. Eilwen, in a showy display, stands atop a wagon and with sword aloft, vows to deal with Delos. But even as her vow leaves her lips, acolytes of the accursed priest, led by a hulking man in a gray robe with strange gray streamers sewn into his clothes, step forth to confront them. The man gives no name, but bears a massive warhammer in his thick arms and accuses Eilwen of blasphemy for speaking such against Delos the High One, and says her words are worthy of death. As we begin this episode, Eilwen's stats are Edge 2, Heart 1, Iron 1, Shadow 3, Wits 2. Current assets: Archer, initial box. Cutthroat, initial box. Shadow Walk, initial box. Current statuses: Supply, 2 out of 5. Spirit, 2 out of 5. Health, 5 out of 5. Momentum, 0 out of 10. Current debilities: none. Failure track, 8 out of 24. Current unspent XP, 3. And now, on to episode 34 of Queen of Shadows. The large warrior priest strode forward. In the dying light of early evening, his face invisible from within the depths of his long cowl. Shadows seemed to darken in the street, despite the illumination offered from torches set in sconces affixed onto the exterior walls of some of the homes. The man lifted the mace off the ground easily, his sleeves falling back, revealing corded muscles like thick ropes. The 3 warriors that followed were smaller, more slender, not nearly as strong, and bearing only spears, yet they too moved with deadly purpose, spreading out in a semicircle. Eilwen yet stood atop the wagon with Toothbite in her right hand, the long serret blade along one edge glinting with reflected torchlight off its dark metal. She let her pack fall to the ground and quickly drew out her dagger in her offhand and prepared to engage the large warrior. Aron, muttering curses under his breath, also dropped his pack and yanked out his shield and axe. Moving to engage the spearman, Seath did the same, drawing his long knife and joining Aron. Valerie and the children, along with many onlookers, backed further away, giving them all room to work the workmanship of death. All right. The 3 warrior priests aren't terribly skilled, I don't think, being more priest than warrior, so those 3 more smaller personages against Eilwen and her companions would probably just be a troublesome fight if it were set up like that, but with the addition of the big man with the mace, who is obviously more dangerous and somewhat more skilled, I'll say this encounter is elevated from troublesome to a dangerous combat. If you remember, dangerous ranked NPCs do 2 damage per harm, and any harm done against them fails 2 progress boxes. We kick off combat with an enter the fray move. Eilwen is facing off against her foe, rolling plus heart. Her heart stat is not very good, and she's out of momentum. I rolled a 3 on the action dice plus 1. For her heart is a measly 4 against a 3 and a 10 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. I can choose to either take 2 momentum and lose initiative, or I can take the initiative. I'm tempted to take the momentum, actually, because mechanically it's what gives her more health, essentially. At least when she makes her endure harm move. But then again, the best defense is also a strong offense. Decisions. Yep, I'll take the plus 2 momentum, so momentum is now 2 out of 10. And hopefully I can gain the initiative on the defense. The large man with the mace grunted and charged at Eilwen as she stood atop the wagon. The mace swept towards her in a long arc, and she attempted to dodge the blow and get in close with the man. Okay, this is a clash move. She gets plus 1 for her iron, but because of her duelist talent, when you strike or clash, you may add plus 2. If you do, decide before rolling, inflict plus 1 harm on a strong hit and count a weak hit as a miss. So I am doing that. So I'm rolling 1d6 with a plus 3 mod total. Roll high. I rolled a 6 on the action dice. Plus 3 is a 9. That is a great roll. Against a 5 and a 7 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. Okay, I can either bolster and take 1 momentum or find an opening and inflict plus 1 harm. She does give 2 harm automatically for using a dangerous weapon, and she'll take the plus 1 harm from the clash move as well as the extra harm from duelist. That's a total of 4 harm, which in a dangerous fight translates to 8 out of 10 progress boxes on that fight getting filled. So nice job. The heavy mace whooshed towards her in a wild swing, but she wasn't there. The heavy weapon slammed into the wagon, easily smashing through the wood and sending splinters spraying, the head of the heavy hammer thudding into the packed dirt beneath. Eilwen's leap from the wagon carried her near the man. Hitting the ground, she slashed downwards and to the right, drawing her blade across the big man's thigh in a wicked slash, causing him to scream in pain and stumble in a spray of blood. At the same time, Aron and Seath rushed to engage the 3 spearmen. Aron turned a spear thrust with his shield and drove his knee up hard into the man's groin. The man groaned and doubled over. Aron brought his axe down onto the man's back. In a sickening crunching sound, the man fell. Seath had judged the timing of the spear thrust and managed to shove the haft aside with his forearm. He then found an opening and plunged his long knife into the chest of the second spearman. "Eilwen!" Aron shouted. She spun just in time and parried a spear thrust from the 3rd spearman. Then she slashed out with her dagger, scoring a painful gash down the man's face. Her knife blade bit deeply, resulting in a jagged line drawn from forehead to chin and through the eye socket, scoring the cheekbone and jaw, flaying skin and muscle exposing the teeth beneath. He fell back with a cry, one hand clutching at his ruined face, blood oozing between pressed fingers. But he still held the spear in his other hand and flailed about himself wildly. Okay, we are at 8 boxes already, and 8 boxes is pretty good. And coming off of a strong hit, I will try to end the fight here. It might be a bad idea, but we will see. I need to roll the challenge dice and hope that they are both under our 8 boxes. I rolled a 6 and a 4. That is a strong hit. On a strong hit, this foe is no longer in the fight. They are killed, out of action, flee, or surrender as appropriate to the situation and your intent. Ask the oracle if unsure. Well, I am not unsure. The large man cursed and struggled to get to his feet, blood streaming from the cut meat of his thigh. She rushed at him with a cry just as he swung the mace in a massive overhand swing. But she moved more quickly than he, and the full length of her blade drove through the man's stomach, its wicked, serrated edge tearing through the flesh and gray robe and out of his back, blood already smearing his clothes and dripping into the thirsty dirt. Aron and Seath quickly handled the wounded spearman, double-teaming him, and after a few blows, he too lay still in the dirt, his skull crushed.
Delos will make your soul a plaything for the heralds.
The large man grunted and wheezed with 3 feet of steel inside of him, bloody spittle spraying into her face, and he gave a bloody grin. Eilwen didn't say anything. She just turned and wrenched her blade free, hard and to the side, severing the spinal column and tearing through the flesh of his side in a spray of blood. The man twitched and fell over in a groan, his grin still spread over his face. The warm smell of iron assailed her senses. A hush fell over the scene. Then the hush gave way to murmurs of concern as a thick shadow, like some inky, stretchy creature of tar, oozed across the ground out of the bodies of the fallen. It split into globules of blackness that stretched through the dirt towards the crowd, moving from light into shadow, then from shadow to shadow. The crowd moved back as one, muttering, cursing, crying out, turning to run, flailing about with torches. Eilwen and her companions also began to back away. "What's happening?" Eilwen said. It's as I said. Magic!" Valerie breathed, her face white, and she shoved her gasping daughters behind her. "Bad magic! Quick, run!" Suddenly, a shadow struck a random person in the crowd, an old woman a few feet away. The strike happened quickly, a twisting serpentine tendril of blackness darting serpent-like into the woman's chest, and the woman arched her back, her basket falling from numb fingers to the ground. But she did not fall, as if speared and held upright by the unnatural force. Her mouth opened to cry out in pain, and the tendril of shadow wrapped around her face and slithered down her throat, disappearing from view. Then she fell. The older woman moaned and lay twitching on the ground. Then, after a few moments, she lay still. Other attacks happened in like manner, spears of shadow stabbing, darting out, cries of pain, and then a slithering entrance. Soon 6 or so from the crowd lay moaning and twitching in the dirt. This is not good," Seath said. Screaming in fear, the crowd fled. They've got the right idea. We need to leave," Aron muttered, backing away. We can't fight this." As he spoke, the older woman rose shakily to her feet with a grunt and a groan. Then, like a puppet on invisible strings, she spun around with jerky movements to face Eilwen. The woman's eyes had filled with dark, inky blackness. No whites at all were visible. It was as if tar swam in their depths. Then the old woman spoke in a whispery, dark voice.
Blood, death so cold to touch and feed the flesh torn and bright and ruby red, gems liquid life to lips come, and let us drink.
Her mouth opened wide, too wide, and tar-like shadow strands stretched between her teeth. The woman sucked in a ragged breath, and then took a halting step towards Eilwen and her companions, hands outstretched, mouth opened wide in a maniacal leer, tongue flapping unnaturally like a beached fish. Okay, I'll say because of this, Eilwen's spirit goes down by 1 and is now at 1 out of 5. Let's roll her endure stress move. I rolled a 4 on the action dice, plus 1 for her heart is a 5, against a 4 and an 8 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. You press on. This is Delos' work, Eilwen breathed. We must get to Highcrag and stop him. Grab what you can and run. Follow me. Thankfully, the movements of the possessed were slow and halting. Keeping away from the woman, they grabbed their packs and took their flight from Longfalls. All right, let's talk a little bit about this. How did that come about, you're probably asking, after a strong hit? Well, it came about from this set of oracle questions I made right after the fight. And here is my conversation with the oracle. How does the crowd react? Are they jubilant that Eilwen and her companions defeated these acolytes? I think that's likely, but on a roll of a 3, I get a no. What? Well, that's not good. Do they become hostile towards Eilwen and her friends? I think there's a 50-50 chance, and on a roll of an 8, I get a yes. This doesn't really make that much sense, but okay. Are there more acolytes in the settlement? I'll say there's a 50-50 chance, but on a roll of a 4, I get a no. Interesting. So the magic at play that came from Highcrag must be clouding the crowd's judgment. Surely. Is that so? I think that's likely. And on a 10, I get a yes and. Not just clouding judgment, but actively corrupting. And it's spreading. Dusk had given way to night, and after moving some distance to the west and climbing higher in elevation, they slowed to a halt and looked behind them down upon Longfalls. They sat gasping, hiding behind a small copse of trees. Down below them, in the now distant settlement, a horn blared out sharp and desperate, a bleeding sound, and it was followed by the clanging of a bell. And then the house went up in flames. That didn't go so well, Seath muttered, leaning against a tree trunk. What will happen to them, Mother? Valerie's eldest daughter, Eilwen, asked, her face pale with fright. Valerie and her daughters sat in the grass and watched the settlement. More torches flared in the night. Below them they could make out the residents of Longfalls milling about like a kicked anthill. Another 2 homes caught fire, and the great flames stretched to the sky. Eilwen couldn't get the vision of the twitching human puppets out of her mind. Hush, daughter, Valerie said. Do not talk about it, just rest. But, Mother, are we safe? Will they come for us too? I saw the darkness, and it... Eilwen, we are safe here, be at peace. Valerie drew Eilwen, Teleri, and Lyri into an embrace, and after some time her children hushed. Seath sat down next to Valerie and her girls and began telling a tale of the mighty hunter Gadwin the Brave. who rode a giant whale across the night sky hunting the moon. But the stars warned of Gadwin's coming, and the moon hid in blackness for a time. And now only once every several days, when the stars say it is safe, she comes out to float upon the black deep. Eilwen sat on a log and scratched the ridges of Scratch's head. He leaned into her ministrations, uttering a guttural purring-like sound. Aron stalked back and forth, arms folded. Then he strode to Eilwen. He stopped when he eyed Scratch, snorting with pleasure under her gentle rubbing and scratching. The creature stretched its neck out so she could better scratch a particularly bothersome area. "Your little pet wasn't much help back there," he grunted and gave the heedless Scratch a baleful look. Scratch opened one eye into a thin yellow slit before the heavy lids of comfort closed the doors upon sight. "Do you know what he did?" "What?" "You didn't see because you were on the wagon like an idiot. But when the men came, he ran, hid under the wagon, then darted away when the fighting started and those shadow things came." "I'm glad he's okay," Eilwen said, and smiled down at the young wyvern. Scratch turned and rolled lazily onto his side, stretching and exposing his underside to Eilwen's gentle fingers. Aron paced some more as an awkward silence layered taut and tiresome between them. He grimaced down at her. "What is it, Aron? Stop looming. Something is on your mind." "Sister," he said, his voice heavy with weary accusation. "What did you do to them?" He waved his hand down at Longfalls spread out below them in the dark. "Me? Nothing. I tried to help them." "Help them?" He raked a hand through his hair and stabbed a finger down at Longfalls, where orange flames consumed some more homes. "Nights beneath. You call that helping them? Look what you unleashed." "You think I caused that? How can you say that?" "You vowed out loud and in public in a manner that invited their attention." "The townsfolk needed hope, Aron. Something to believe in." "And I suppose," he leaned in closer, his voice quieter but low, tense and fierce, "that you were going to proclaim yourself their queen next, huh? They likely would have slit our throats if those priests hadn't beaten them to it." "I had nothing to do with that." "Nothing to do with... You slew those men, and look what happened." "We slew them. You helped too. You can't put this on me, Aron. Remember Belvin at Frostbridge? He had one of those spirits tied to him too. Or do you think I caused that as well?" Aron hesitated for a moment. "Well, no, I don't know. Maybe." He ran his fingers through his tangle of blonde hair, blue eyes cold and hard. "But what of Mother's magic? That shadow magic you said she taught you. I've seen you use it. Remember when we escaped the ruined elven city under the mountain? You called the shadows and, well, what happened tonight seemed much like that." "That's different," Eilwen said. "This thing that Delos is doing is different. It's an abomination. The shadows I call, they merely mask sight and sound. That's it. They don't possess others. It's... I know there are some things that seem similar, but trust me, Aron, it's nothing like what I do." "You better be right," he muttered, and an uneasy silence fell between them. For a while they listened to Seath, Valerie, and the children laughing quietly in the dark as Seath started doing impersonations of a whale. "And now you will go and confront Delos?" The fire had gone out of Aron's eyes, and he just looked resigned. "It must be done." "You'll be risking everything we're working towards, you know," he said quietly. "Yes, but you must see that this is far more important. What if this foulness keeps spreading like some sickness, some unstoppable plague? What of Father and Frostbridge and all the other settlements and circles in these lands? My lands. It has spread to one settlement already, she said, and even at this distance they could hear the cries of the tumult down below. She dropped her voice even further. It has to be stopped, Aron. If not, and all the land suffocates beneath the twisting coils of this darkness, will there be anything left to rule it all? You think you can stop it? She shrugged. I might. There's something in those iron pillars. I don't know what it is, but Mother may have known. I have to at least try. They looked down at Longfalls for a long time, and another home went up in flames, and then Aron finally sighed. Perhaps you're right. For a while the wind bore secrets upon susurrations between the shadowed trees. The night was clear, and above Longfalls the night sky began to peep forth with stars. But the moon remained hidden, hiding from Gadwin, no doubt. What of them? Aron nodded to Valerie and her children. We can't take them to Highcrag. She shook her head. No, but we can give them some supplies and have them hide here for a couple of days, perhaps with Seath, until we return. Then you and I can see to Delos at Highcrag. Aron's face was unreadable in the darkness, but she caught his resigned nod. Very well, he said. Let's get this over with. All right, friends, this review comes from Boyd Roberts from Spotify. This was written about 6 months ago. Boyd writes, a great start. Thank you, Boyd, for that short and sweet review. And I hope you remain an avid listener until we arrive at what I hope will be a great finish. But this meandering epic has several turns yet to go, methinks, before we arrive at that inevitable conclusion. Anyway, thanks again, Boyd. Friends, if you would like to listen to some of the great shows out there, head over to soloroleplayersnetwork.com and find something that piques your interest. And if something doesn't, well, you can always go back and listen to episode 1 of Queen of Shadows. Thank you for joining us, and I sincerely hope you enjoyed what you experienced. If you would like to support Roll, Ponder, and Play, you can do so in a number of ways. You can give the show a positive review on your podcatcher of choice. You can share the show with your friends and family and on your socials. Nothing beats word of mouth as a way to bring in new listeners. You can join my Patreon at patreon.com/Roll, Ponder, and Play. There you can find show notes and transcripts, as well as other projects I'm involved in. And paid subscribers get access to subscriber-only episodes, shows, and other content. Finally, you can simply reach out to me and say hello. Comments from you are what inspire me to keep doing this, and I'd sincerely love to hear what you think of the show. To do so, you can find me on my Patreon, or on Discord at Roll, Ponder, and Play, or by email at rollponderandplay@gmail.com. Until we meet again on Roll, Ponder, and Play, may your own dice rolls ever bring you success.